I think Imperial Typewriter Strike actually signifies kind of industrial turmoil taking place, which is basically that in factories where most of the South Asians were employed, you have two-tier system. And in many of those struggles and disputes, if you look through it, trade union basically opposed the strikes. So there was no option but for us to mobilize the communities to support the strikers. And Imperial Typewriter is one of the best example of what I call it community action come industrial action, because we used to raise huge amount of funds. People used to come and give us food for strikers and so on and so forth. And of course, many of those strikes we lost. But what we did is to change the way the white trade unions, and especially Transport and General Workers Union or Knit Worker and Hosiery Workers Union, where because they're mostly worker in textile or general union kind of, they begin to change their attitude towards black workers.
We ended up organising pickets in Air Valley Yards. The workers were largely Asian, and they were sort of being not given the same rights as other white staff in essence. That campaign, lasted quite a while. They didn't win anything at the end of the day. The trades unions didn't support them. Whilst the Trades Council and certain members of the Trades Council did turn up on the picket lines, the pickets were largely, from the Asian youth movement in terms of supporting the workers there.
Under those kind of circumstances, we had no choice but to build allegiances, to build, broad fronts, to work with other groups and get their support. So when the miners' issues happened, we were very, very involved. We used to go onto the Old Grief to the miners' picket lines. We used to knock on the windows, get our members out in the morning, and get them the minibuses and take them every single day down to the miners' picket line. And I remember on one occasion, this disgruntled young lad that I'd woken up at 6 in the morning. When we arrived there, one of the miners, not all of them, but one of the miners turned round and said, "What the hell is this package doing here?" So this young lad turned around to me and goes, "Thank you very much, for waking me up at 6 in the morning only to get racist abuse." And to my response, "Well, brother, you've got to recognise that, we can see the bars and some of them can't." But I think the miners, for us, some of the mining communities that we went and stayed with, the way that we were treated, the humility, the humbleness of the miners, the hatred that we had for the police and the siege that we experienced in our communities, and the way we were being treated by the police, I saw that echoed by the mining families. We were learning about other people's oppression. Class and race and imperialism, all those things came together for us.
Once the Asian Youth Movement formed, and we also had education programs for ourselves, I did a lot of reading. I mean, I probably did more reading since I left school, right? And I just extensively read on what was happening around the world. I read quite a lot of stuff by Marx, Lenin, but that's not to say that I didn't read other things as well. But I was attracted to their writings because they talked about things that affected the community that I came from.
We were being influenced a lot by the American, Black Power movement, and certainly the American political movements.
There were lots of activities, lot of activities in supporting the liberation movements across. So from Ireland on one side, we're talking about, I remember, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, South Africa, Palestine, of course, one of them.
We did not understand or accept how a Jew born somewhere in the world had a right to return to a place he had no connection with. Yet Palestinians who were born there had to live in refugee camps. And this Palestinian issue was just brought to the fore in those days with people like Leila Khalid.
Birmingham had a large Irish community, and Birmingham AYM members worked with those Irish comrades, and somewhere along the line some of them said, well, we'll organise a delegation to Ireland. Ireland very much politicised, as seeing, it was the first time we saw army on the streets. And also the discussions were about, people were talking about, because the inner cities had erupted in 81 and 85, and so the Irish Republican youth were telling us about, you can't have spontaneous riots, they have to be organised, and you have to do this, you have to do that, and so there's a lot of parallels.
So there have been a range of meetings, and we managed to get some of the key people to come and speak.
It was a packed hall meeting during the time of the Lancaster House discussions. And Edison Zavobo spoke, and I remember he said, "The call is terrorists. If fighting for my people's liberation means I'm a terrorist, so be it. I'm proud of it." And he listed a whole series of injustices that were taking place to Africa and against Africans in Zimbabwe, about the denial of land. And if trying to get those back through the use of arms meant he was being called a terrorist, then he was proud of it. And I remember the room just was electric every time he said, "I'm proud to be a terrorist," because we were shouting, "Well, we're all terrorists," or whatever words we could think, but our ululation and our screaming and shouting really were the fact that, yes, we're all proud to be terrorists. And isn't it so strange today that, almost the same sort of language is back